Morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order at the meeting of the South Coast British Columbia Transportation and Police Board meeting. And before we start, we'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting today and Metro Vancouver Transit Police operate throughout the traditional territories of the Lower Mainland Coast Salish peoples. And we give thanks for their hospitality on these lands. I'd also like to say a word before we start about the floods that have happened this week and send our thoughts and our good wishes and our prayers out to the people of British Columbia who are suffering, and our thanks to all of the first responders and volunteers who have stepped up in a myriad of amazing ways to help. It's going to be difficult for a while for many people, but I know we're all going to try and do our best to do what we can to assist. And thank you to everybody who's pitched in so far. Okay. I guess we call it to order. We have done that. Consent agenda, item 1.1. Has everybody had a chance to look at the items that are listed in item 1.1? And would anybody like to pull them out from that item? Murray.
Could I have item 1F pulled out, please?
The statistical report. Anything else? I don't see anybody. Okay. Can I have a motion to?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded. Marnie, thank you. The South Coast British Columbia Transportation Authority Police Board of Directors approves and receives for information the following items from the consent agenda A to J, except F, which has been taken out. Okay, we will consider that on item 1.3. Murray, you wanted to talk about that report.
Yeah, I just have a question, a couple of things. When I read the conclusion, the conclusion seemed like it was just another sort of a point of information. And what I was wondering, is there anything in this report based on, the TPS executive's review of it that the board should be concerned about?
Yeah, you're looking at the conclusion. No, there isn't. Just looking at it, that the mannerisms in which investigations were conducted after COVID started were adjusted by all agencies. And I would actually suggest that some efficiencies have now been found where, like it talks about interviews, where an in-person interview is required, it's still done, like such as interviewing of members. But sometimes you're dealing with witnesses to an event, and being able to conduct it by Zoom meetings is both more convenient to the investigator and to the witness themselves. So the conclusion as practically is that I think we've actually found a way for all investigative agencies to become more efficient and effective with their time when conducting these investigations.
But in relation to the statistics that are provided in the report, yeah, is there anything there that is, from your perspective, alarming relative to the numbers or the outcomes of complaints?
No, there isn't.
All right, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? I have one question. Chief, could you explain a little bit, tell us a little bit more about the integrated unit that's just begun in September?
Yeah, so what we had looked at for a period of time was that in some places, such as West Vancouver or Port Moody, they might be operating with a single individual who would be in their professional standards. And then for other places such as Delta, New West, and ourselves, we're generally running with about 4 members, anywhere from 3 to 4 members. There's a lot of work that sometimes happens where you're ordered to do external investigations in particular. So if a Section 89, for example, which is where there's an injury that has been possibly arisen during the course of an event,
Sorry, Section 89 of the Police Act you're referring to?
Section 89 of the Police Act requires that an external investigation be done whenever somebody is injured due to the actions, or they'll say inactions of the police. So, people do get hurt, injuries, and that do occur from time to time because police are put in a position of having to arrest people or respond to incidents or violent occasions. So what happens just by statistically, you would assume, is that a place such as Vancouver, which is much larger, generates Section 89 reviews, but they have to be done externally. So you have smaller agencies disproportionately getting an increase in numbers. So what we looked at was to form more of an integrated unit amongst the 5 agencies that would allow for some efficiencies, both in the use of resources, assignment of minor files, ability to support each other, and I would say equally kind of work with a single voice when it comes to dealing with the complaint commissioner and coming up with new ideas.
So that's you, that's us, Delta, New Westminster, West Vancouver, and Port Moody.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. And so what it also does is allows, say, because we rely on like Vancouver Police quite a bit for, in discussions and support, you now have what I'd say are, there's 2 agencies, there's us and themselves. Abbotsford is still doing their own, and of course the Lower Island still does their own professional standards. So when we brought this together, the Integrated Professional Standards Unit, it was done with no increase in costs. It was kind of meant to be a cost neutral, to look for efficiencies and effectiveness, as opposed to, which would become more beneficial, as opposed to any cost savings or cost increase. So this is a trial period, which was actually been working very well to date, and provided the support to each other with one person. In this case, it's Inspector Dappet Herman, who looks after a lot of the joint management of all the teams.
Mm-hmm.
So you're aware these teams still work at their home agencies. It's allowed, this virtual world has allowed us. So if the Port Moody member who is assigned to work as part of one of the teams is overseen by a supervisor here at Transit, they don't have to physically be located here. The nature of the work has them spread out in terms of it. If they want to come here, there is desk space to come in for a period of time, but the communication aspect has been greatly enhanced amongst all aspects of this.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, anyone?
Sounds like a good idea.
Working so far.
All right. Well, thank you. Do I need a recommendation to accept that report?
So moved.
Thank you, Murray. Seconded. Thank you, Marnie. Okay, so we've accepted that report in item 1.3. We're now into item 2, public delegations. Do we have any written submissions?
We do not, Sarah.
Okay, so now I'd like to welcome Kimberly Wood, who is the president of the Greater Vancouver Association of the Deaf and a member of the Metro Vancouver Transit Police Chiefs Community Council. And Ms. Wood is going to give us a presentation. Thank you for coming and welcome. And please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Oops. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I feel quite honored to be invited and asked to give you my presentation, but I just want to clarify, though, first of all, I'm not the president of the Greater Vancouver Association of the Deaf. I am a past president. I am still, however, a member of GVAD, and I do support the board and represent them to the larger community. So I know you've given me a specific amount of time, and I've tried to come up with what I think are some important points to make you all aware, this council aware of the deaf and hard of hearing and how best to communicate. So I have my slide, I believe. Do I have my slides up here?
Yes.
Yes, they are being shown now.
Oh, wait, can I have the next slide then, please? Great, thank you. So I'm going to refer to the Greater Vancouver Association of the Deaf as GVAD, and it is the oldest advocacy organization for people with disabilities in the province. It originally was founded in 1926. The name, however, was different. It was the Vancouver Association for the Deaf Adults. And they wanted at that time to improve the situation for deaf employment, working in collaboration with the Vancouver League of Hard of Hearing, or VLHH. They would send letters to the government agencies to, lobby for improved services in employment settings and whatnot in the Vancouver area. We changed it later on to what we now call as GVAD because Vancouver has grown. So it is the Greater Vancouver Association of the Deaf. And we still continue in that same mandate, which is to lobby and advocate for improved accessibility. For example, we spend a great deal of time working with the ministry with respect to the BC Accessibilities Act. And could I have the next slide, please? So our mandate is to, as I mentioned, to make sure that we continue to advocate for our deaf members and their well-being and their social and cultural and educational and recreational activities for the deaf. We also work with various regional, provincial, and national organizations of the deaf and hard of hearing. For example, the Canadian Association of the Deaf. They are the national body and we are the provincial chapter or the local chapter under the umbrella of the national body. We also want to make sure that GVAD continues to give back to deaf organizations, deaf communities, and partnering with various groups who support the aims that we work towards. Could I have the next slide, please? So we all are here because we provide policing services, and that's an essential service. And of course, depending on the situation, some situations are more emergency than others. I wanted to share with you the important features of when dealing with and interacting with deaf and hard of hearing people. When you approach a deaf person or a hard of hearing person and you start to speak to that person from behind, they can't see you. So our eyes and our hands are very important. So you need to tap us, on the shoulder, look at us, at our face, and speak to us that way. And if in fact you need to arrest someone who's deaf or hard of hearing, you want to make sure that you don't handcuff them from behind. But then you've cut off our main method of communication, which is our hands. So then we can write on a piece of paper with our hands, we can, gesture and do some signs. And then of course we will wait for the sign language interpreter that you will call to arrive. We can do simple communications in writing. However, the deaf and hard of hearing people are not equally versed in written English. So depending on their language development, they may have more fluency than others in English. So you would want to call the services of a sign language interpreter. And that would be the responsibility of your services to arrange that service, to arrange for that interpreter to be on site. Whether it's to communicate with someone if they were a witness or if they need to be arrested, you would need to make sure that a sign language interpreter is there to facilitate that communication. If a deaf or hard of hearing person comes to you for help, then be prepared to write notes back and forth. If that's not going to be adequate, then again, you would call the services of a sign language interpreter. And that would be the first choice of most deaf and hard of hearing people because their first language is sign language and they're most confident in their native language. I'm just looking at my slides. Now, hearing aids are tools that are used, and even some deaf people and hard of hearing people use that, but it does not mean that they have full access to the communication that's around them. They can hear sounds, but they won't capture everything at 100%. So it's a tool to assist with sounds that are in the environment, identifying who's talking, that sort of thing. But it's not 100% communication, if you will. Could I have the next slide, please? Now, this slide speaks to how to book a sign language interpreter. You can call the place that's called Wavefront Center, and they will provide sign language interpreters for deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind individuals. And there are two categories of interpreters. Right now, we are using the services of an ASL English interpreter, and they've been trained and certified as interpreters, and they've completed their formal training. We have another category of interpreters that we call deaf interpreters. Now, in some scenarios, a deaf interpreter would be useful. An ASL English interpreter does not have the lived experience of a deaf person. They don't have that range of language skills that some deaf people may not understand a sign language interpreter, such as the ones that the category of the interpreters that we're using today. But with a deaf interpreter, they have a range of ability in signed language to communicate with someone who's at a different level of understanding sign language. And so that deaf interpreter would work in concert with the ASL English interpreter, and you would have full access through those services. And they would be able to work with individuals who are deaf, blind, and so on. Hopefully that's clear. All right, next slide, please. I think I already spoke to this. This is how did you approach someone who is deaf or hard of hearing? Well, you wouldn't speak to them from behind. You'd have to look at them, be prepared to write notes, tap them on the shoulder if you want to get their attention. Don't handcuff them with their hands at the back. Obviously, if someone is completely unreasonable and out of control, then that might be a safety reason where you'd want to handcuff them with their hands behind their back until they've calmed down, and let them know in writing that you will, release them and handcuff them in the front until, an interpreter arrives, or we can continue to communicate until an interpreter arrives. Now, some deaf and hard of hearing people are able to lip read, but in today's COVID pandemic times, it's very difficult for us to rely on lip reading because masks are being worn and people don't want to drop their masks in order to accommodate our needs. So we're recognizing that the pandemic has caused a number of barriers, particularly lip reading for deaf and hard of hearing people. So the fallback approach would be to write notes. And as I mentioned before, hands and eyes are essential to us. We can't, communicate without them. So you would contact Wavefront to book a sign language interpreter. Please be aware that Wavefront has a number of telephone numbers that you can use. One is work hours. The other one is emergency. So I believe it's after 5 p.m. until, if something were to happen after 5 p.m., they have another number that you can call. Yeah, and here's the list of contacts. And also it includes how to reach medical interpreting services. So if, for example, a passenger or someone at your facilities is injured, then you could also call that number and an interpreter would be dispatched. Ambulance also have what's called a video remote interpreting. I think it's video remote interpreting. VRI is actually a brand new service. It's just started to be implemented within ambulance services. So if emergency responders come, they have their own equipment, and then a VRI interpreter would come up on a screen. They would be transported to a hospital. Once they arrive, a live or in-person interpreter would be called. And then that VRI interpreter would be let go. So it's a good stopgap measure to have. So that would be an additional number to call for transit emergencies or police situations. You would call any of those numbers. Next slide. Now, the Vancouver Police Department has a set of flashcards. So if someone is pulled over, then as you see here on the slide, there's a flashcard. It can indicate, maybe one of your vehicle lights aren't working. It could also indicate, you've been speeding. So it's a good way or a good tool to communicate in the moment. So maybe that's something that this council can come up with. And it's a very simple way of, it's a stopgap measure. If you just want to indicate to someone why you're pulling them over or why you're speaking to them, a tool such as this would be really helpful to communicate and avoid any misunderstandings that, would come if you didn't have such a tool or didn't have any other method of communication. Next slide. Oh, any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions? Murray.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, very good presentation. I appreciate Kimberly coming to make the presentation and have learned from it. So thank you for that. This is a question maybe directed at Chief Jones. Do we have a similar card to the card that's being used by the VPD to communicate, when traffic stops occur?
Yes, so we have almost the same. We implemented it about 2 years ago, and it was something that I think we discussed and brought up through Kimberly at the Transit Police Chiefs Community Council.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
And then George, you had a question. You're muted, George.
Sorry, thank you. And the chief just answered my question. I agree with Maria. Kimberly, thank you for the information. Two just very quick questions. One, the video interpreter and technology going forward. Again, maybe to the chief, is that something that you and your team have looked at? And the second part of it is transit and its integrated piece with a TransLink and the employees, the security staff and others. Are there resources that you call upon as transit police with TransLink personnel to assist in situations that arise?
So yeah, so thanks, George. We rely on not only ourselves, but in a really coordinated approach. TransLink is very active in terms of dealing with individuals, whether it be those who are physical mobilities, deaf, other limitations in terms of it. So between ourselves and TransLink, there's a fairly robust program towards being able to communicate both orally, written, different languages and different styles and techniques. I don't believe anyone's looked at the virtual reality interpreter as of yet. I don't think we've gone as far as that. From what I've understood, the ambulance service is the first ones to have this in place. So mainly, if I'm correct in it, it requires having a device in your hand, such as a tablet, something that you can look at and hold. As a lot of our work can be, although we do have cell phone devices, foot-based in terms of it would be looking at the equipment needs. But, Kimberly is a very valuable member of the Transit Police Community Council, and bringing forward ideas or initiatives that she has seen or experienced in other places has been of great assistance. And I think sometimes, again, our ability to leverage TransLink resources to bring forward this in a quicker manner is really important.
Thank you.
And do we have any other questions? Oh,
This is Kimberly here.
go ahead.
I want to say that VRI as a tool is very good, but it's not something that you would want to rely on when communicating with someone who's deaf or hard of hearing. It's really just a temporary measure until a live interpreter arrives. The reason I say that is because it is technology, and technology, as you probably know, does act up. It's not always the most reliable picture. And here we are today in Metro Vancouver, which we have reliable services, and we have Wi-Fi towers everywhere. But if you start going out of the Metro Vancouver area, then you're going to encounter issues. And so that's the reason why, deaf and hard of hearing people have indicated that they would accept VRI as a temporary method of communication until the in-person or live interpreter arrives. With regards to transit policing, text 87878. I can't remember the numbers, but the numbers that you can text if you have an emergency on one of the public transit facilities. Deaf and hard of hearing people will use that because it's a very immediate, direct, instant method of communication. Deaf community people across Canada have been advocating the CRTC, for example, the Canadian Radio and Television Corporation, to allow what we call real-time texting with 911. So it's not just a message that we wait to get a response to. It's at the same time. So we're texting synchronicity or at the same time rather. So that is something that we've been lobbying CRTC to get real-time texting. It's not there yet. I know there are regulations and that we're not on the same page, but we'd like to have this accessible to all. What we use right now, Chief Dave Jones, you know that we're using that service and it's available to anyone, whether they be a person who uses sign or a person who speaks. So that's a great tool to, alert your people to come and respond to a matter that needs attention. But this would be great, as I mentioned before, getting real-time texting approved by the CRTC. But that's another discussion.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a question? I'm wondering.
Sorry, who's speaking?
Sorry, it's me, Sarah, the chair.
Thank you.
I'm wondering what we can do at the board level, either for the meetings themselves that we have that are public, or in any other way to make our services more accessible. So it strikes me today, for example, that we don't have captioning and we don't have somebody signing the discussions. And I'm wondering if that's something we should be thinking about. If I guess I'm just looking for some suggestions on how to make our meetings and our public sessions more accessible.
Sorry, is this question for Kimberly?
Yes.
Well, I agree. Captioning would be very nice. That would be a great accessibility tool. Often what happens is that we are unaware of what is happening in our communities. Many of us are not aware that this board exists or that it's accessible or that it's, even open to the public. So it would be a great feature to start promoting it and to mention that this information is accessible through, whether it be sign language, whether it be through captioning services. I think that would, certainly be an important piece, is to advertise it more broadly.
Okay. So thank you. We'll take that away and look at it.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for
Thank
coming.
you.
If I can, just before you go, Kimberly, just again, really thank you. I think you've been on the Chiefs Community Council since I've arrived here. And it becomes and it shows the value of us reaching out to make sure that we get input from representatives from cross segments of our communities in terms of it. And even when the pandemic started and you provided those examples of, people sitting nearby or trying to create distancing and the uncomfort level of how that affected the deaf and hard of hearing, that it was important. And I'm glad we could be the venue or avenue for you to get those concerns forward, and certainly look forward to continue to working with you on the Chiefs Community Council.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Together.
Thank you.
Okay. So, thank you. You guys don't have to stay if you don't want to, but you're certainly welcome. Sorry, it's Sarah again.
And this is Kimberly speaking. Thank you very, very much. And it was a great honor. Thanks. Bye-bye now.
And you're certainly welcome to stay if you would like. But
You know, I have things I need to do. So my apologies. I have some plumbing issues I need to get attended to. So really sorry about that.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Okay. We now are moving on to our second presentation, our hate crimes and transit police response. And we've got Constable Shiraz Hanif speaking. Thank you.
Sorry, just if I can here, I think just want to also introduce, we have Sergeant Cheryl Simpkins also here today.
Thank you.
In terms of it, and we don't like to say that Cheryl's Shiraz's boss. They work together on many different initiatives in terms of it. So Sergeant Simpkin is here as well.
Great. Thank you. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Shiraz speaking. Stephen, if we can go next slide, please. So with Metro Vancouver Transit Police and the transit system, we didn't see same increase. We didn't see any increase in hate crimes, although Canadian police departments reported about 718 more police reported hate crimes through 2019, 37% increase. Although we didn't see an increase, we proactively tackled multiple anti-hate crime initiatives, taking the message that the transit police is committed to providing a safe and harassment-free transit system for everyone. Next slide, Steve, please. So Constable Miles Talibom and myself, we partnered up. We were tasked with creating a kind of a welcoming newcomers to the transit system portfolio, which kind of added on to the hate crimes portfolio that we had already ongoing for the last few years. Due to our ongoing relationship with post-secondary institutions, there's open dialogue between us all the time, and they're comfortable bringing us concerns. And a few of the institutions conveyed concerns for some of the visible, diverse students about reporting the reports of increasing hate crimes and fear of using transit when returning to school in the fall. So in September, Constable Teitelbaum was able to coordinate a number of safety sessions at various campuses across Metro Vancouver. And then we took that a step further and we incorporated our back to school campaign and reflector campaigns into our hate crime mandate as well. Kind of put them all together because the bigger audience we get, the more people we reach, the better the message gets out there and the safer the community feels using the transit system. Next slide. So part of that campaign, we created transit safety brochures, and we had them translated into simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, Korean, and Punjabi. And this was a great success. We achieved what we wanted and more. Mainly seniors and foreign exchange students. They would always walk back up to us after reading the pamphlet and thank us. Newton Loop, I gave to a Punjabi-speaking senior that spoke no English, and he just nodded his head and walked away. And about 5 minutes later, he came back and found me, tapped me on my shoulder, and then shook my hand and said, "Thank you." That's how much this meant to them. Next slide. So on the same note, we conducted numerous transit pop-ups. We started off by targeting stations where there were higher Asian populations due to the backlash from COVID and the increase, not an increase, but the motivation changed for hatred, and the Asian community was being targeted more so. once again, was a great success. From there, we spread it over to post-secondary schools, bus loops, Canada Line, SkyTrain, and Newton Loop. So then we started going outside of just the Asian focus, and we're using our staff members that spoke various languages to help us connect with the communities, and our waterfront CPC volunteers, great asset. They speak numerous languages, and they're always ready to help translate and make people feel welcome to the transit system and feel safer. Next slide, please. For 5 years now, I've been working with BC Hate Crimes E Division, Anthony Statham, VPD Darren Ranmore, Jazz Johal, and Sarah RCP. All these are different diversity groups and outreach groups within different departments, and we've been hitting up different association centers with the Muslim community. With the help of social media and YouTube, I think we've got the message of how to report incidents using our text message system or 911, when to use non-emergency, what a hate crime is, and the threshold of a hate crime, and the message of our commitment to providing a safe and harassment transit system, and our partners would follow up with a safe and harassment-free community for all our members, no matter what you look like, what your faith is, who you love. It's a long message, but we're getting it out there, and we've reached over 100,000 people now just in the Muslim community with that message, let alone everybody else that we're targeting with our messages. Next slide, please. So our work with newcomers, like I said, we got pamphlets, we got brochures, we're hitting post-secondary institutions. This was something, kind of a pilot project. Canadian Taiwanese Cultural Center. I walked in there one day just to say hi, I introduced myself, and they loved the attention. They said they haven't had a chance to vent their frustrations with their seniors not feeling safe in the community or on transit due to not being able to report crimes because of English being the second language. We canvassed our staff and we found a Mandarin speaker, and we took the officer to their Taiwanese center, and we did a full transit safety session in Mandarin. And by the end of it, we had about 30 to 40 seniors struggle, get out of the seats, and applaud, standing ovation for that. Numerous questions, and there were high fives and hugs after, because they felt that we did care. We care, but we just got to get the message across that we care. And if you don't speak English, you don't understand our message, or like we're talking about with sign language, it's nice to get the message out to everyone that you matter as well, because they do matter to us. We're also taking another step. It's in the progress. We just recently made a new transit safety video. Now we're going to have that translated into numerous languages, all kinds of languages. And that way, when we go to an institution, Mosaic or any institution to help newcomers, we can leave them with that CD, and they can give it to families that speak that particular language. And it'll be an introduction to the transit system, and it has a safety message incorporated right into the CD. So the Taiwanese Center thing was a success, great success. So now I'm going to pick, we're going to canvass for members that speak certain languages and target those communities, get the message out to the seniors or the newcomers that don't quite speak English, aren't fluent in English yet. The Sikh communities in the works right now. After that, we're going to try the Jewish community and keep going from there on. Serbian, and it's going to be language based, just to get the small population that's ESL and cannot connect with the general media that we put out their media information. Next slide, please. We just recently welcomed back Jenny and her new partner Marco to our community engagement team. Jenny's a great asset. She's got a huge connect with the Korean community, and it didn't take long for that to spark back up. And they're also tasked with focusing on seniors. Every group of transit users have specific needs or concerns when it comes to safety or transit. And so they're going to be addressing seniors from here on. Next slide, please. Islam Unraveled is one of the many groups that we're working with, but they're able to get our message out within the Muslim community, and they're a multi-faith group, so it helps make connections. We've reached 50,000 plus people to get our message across through them. We also organized, this is with the open dialogue with the community and like I said, post-secondary institutions, but elementary school, for their end of Ramadan Eid celebration, they requested, it was during COVID, they couldn't celebrate, they requested emergency services drive-by, and this happened to be in Surrey. So transit police, bylaws, Surrey RCMP, diversity. We had a huge parade, and it was a great success, and it motivates children. It motivates them that, you know, they matter, keep on the right path, and you can be what you want to be. But they're huge fans of transit now, transit police, transit system, and our partners that participated. June 13th, 2021, I was interviewed by CBC Radio Cross Country Checkup to discuss personal impacts of being Muslim in the community. That was also national coverage on that one. And it was interesting because I got to speak as not just a police officer, but a regular civilian without the uniform. It was interesting. And that next slide will conclude my portion. Thank you.
Constable, thank you. That was terrific.
Mhm.
So interesting and amazing amount of work that you're doing. It's great.
Yeah, to spare the board of sitting here for an hour listening. I mean, that's just a small little tidbit of what our community engagement team is doing, but it's huge. I wish I could present all of it to you guys, but I'm proud of it.
It's great. It's great. Do we have any questions?
If I can, just a comment here, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Constable Shiraz and Sergeant Simpkin and her entire team. I think Shiraz here has just given you but a piece of what he does. I don't think I can, I don't know if he ever goes home, right? I think we always see him. He's a figure at the Blue Eagle Community Cadet Program. He, as he said, he's a constant outreach to the Muslim community throughout the entire region. He's looking at these initiatives of how to connect with the diverse communities, and especially overcoming. We have, I don't know if we have recruiting numbers exactly, but probably upwards of 30 plus languages available from our members who work here. So you saw Constable I'll get it wrong, K.O. Adamson, who was in that picture there. And, you know, being able to mine that type of not only resource, but getting the other members involved in these type of programming and opportunities is really about making those connections, right? I mean, you know, our goal, of course, is to make the system safe and then make sure that people are aware that it's safe to use, right? And you has to go hand in hand if your messaging isn't getting out there. So for both Cheryl and Shiraz here, it's always a big thanks. The only thing they ever need from us, I think at times, is just money to do things, right? I don't think there's a lack of energy or resources, but or probably resources on occasion, but is that they're always challenging us with expanding programs and that. But these are the good side of what we do. And I really appreciate everything he does, including those copies he drops off at my office, which he doesn't need to do. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief. But like I say, it starts with having a great leader and leadership and trickling right downwards, right to my sergeant. That's where it starts. And it's not myself at all. It's the whole team. It's amazing how we feed off each other and just, yeah. And just a Blue Eagle note, just I'm excited, but BC Lions has offered us tickets for our Blue Eagles tonight, and the kids are stoked, and we'll be taking them. Yeah, they gave us the best section in the house, and the section is just ours for the Blue Eagle cadets tonight. So you might get on a Jumbotron and watch us.
Hang on, I'm just looking in my in basket, Traz. Yeah, no, nothing there.
So I see some hands up. I think, Murray, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, well, first of all, it's always good to see passion. I think that's the real difference maker when it comes to moving the dial in any area. And I see passion not only in Shiraz, but in Sergeant Simpkin and Kirk Rattray, Constable Rattray. All the presentations demonstrate that. So I just want to commend you for demonstrating that, and for not just doing the job, but doing it in a way that goes above and beyond what would otherwise be expected. So we appreciate that. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for taking the time to present this morning. And I've learned from your presentation a lot. So good on you.
Thank you.
And
Means a lot.
Adam,
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Shiraz. Great to see you. I just
Hey.
want to thank you on the excellent presentation, but also just further to what Dave said, the incredible work that you do in the community. I see you out at different events, and I know you interact with officers from all across the region and community members from all across the region. And you always do an exemplary job of representing the Metro Vancouver Transit Police. They're lucky to have you. You're a great ambassador, and you know, Cheryl and Kirk and the whole team, like, you've got a really good system there, and just really appreciate everything that you do.
Chief, thanks.
George,
Just kind of adding to what everyone else has said, but I found the thing inspirational. We've got a small agency, and to see the work that you folks are doing is great. And the old phrase of a picture's worth 1,000 words. Some of the folks that were in those photographs that you showed outside the Taiwanese Cultural Center and so on, and demonstrating that is how the face of transit police is going to be seen for obviously years to come. And I think, Chief, what you're talking about, and obviously the whole team going forward around this idea of here representing the community and being there is so important. Question I have, it kind of goes back to what Sarah said to the previous presentation. Is there something we as a board, Constable Shiraz, that we can do to support the efforts of the chief, the executive, and the agency as a whole?
Sir, that's a loaded question. There's so much work to be done out there. I mean, even with we can start off with, when you hit the younger audience, it's a better investment because you can steer them in the direction. That's our future. And we have 60, 70, 80 years to get out of these kids. So Blue Eagles cadet program, that's one of my favorites. Oh my goodness. Like, because I started off in the program and I saw these kids and they were just sheltering themselves. And now they walk up to you, hello, sir, how you doing? And just beautiful. You know, you're empowering these kids, and that's our future. So when working with marginalized children, yeah, if you see that come across your desk, please be lenient and help us out. And otherwise, I mean, like I said, my sergeant and deputies, Chief Jones, they're well aware of, our team is amazing. Like, they know every detail of what we're doing, and they're there to support us. So they usually will come up to you guys with a pretty accurate picture of what we need, where we're at, because there's no barriers in our department. It's beautiful. I can walk right into any deputy, my sergeant, the chief, anybody, and say, hey, this is what's going on. I need this. And they usually come through with it. But I can't even give you a list of where to start because there's so much to be done out there.
Sure.
We're just scratching the surface, but yeah.
Well, obviously
I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry.
You did. Your passion comes through. And I think, again, just final comment is, given the atmosphere out there today about policing and some of the commentary, it's great to see this kind of interaction with the community. So keep it up.
Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you, guys. We're just delighted to see these kinds of programs, and it's just terrific. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Raz. Thanks,
Thank
Cheryl.
you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Ross. Okay, so we'll move on to item 2.3, and that's the Chief Officer Information Report.
So thanks. Perhaps what I'll do is I'll get Deputy Chief Cross and then Cumberworth to go first with the admin and ops, and then I'll talk a bit about the mandatory vaccine policy after their update. So Deputy Cross.
Great, thanks, Chief. Board. Just a couple of quick updates here on the HR side of the house. So we recently had our promotional process, maybe have been reported to you from the chief directly, but that was a very good outcome. We had 7 sergeants promoted, 1 staff sergeant. We had 1 woman promoted there and some visible diversity in that group as well. And I know the chief has just approved to start with a new corporal rank, which is being run right now, giving others opportunity to experience supervision at a lower level and to be able to coach and mentor them to be able to be better prepared for next year when we run another promotional competition for sergeants. So that's been a key piece for us, is to build the strength of that supervisory rank. And this is the next step in doing that. Mandatory vaccine. My report from Clark is that we have all but 2 of our staff who have been vaccinated, and they have requested exemptions. So that's going through a review right now. But other than that, it's gone very, very well. On the recruiting side of the house, we have 5 seats coming up in the January class. And I think we are halfway there. I think we've got 3 binders going to be hitting my desk either late this week or next week. And probably the earliest. We've been prepared for that next class for quite some time. So some very good candidates in that. On the training side of things, we've just finished our firearms qualifications for the year. We've got 100% compliance there. And in our cycle 4 of training this year, they're doing some vapor scent training. So they're getting some training with our explosive detection dog unit, understanding how that operates in their operations working environment, and also doing some training on transit infrastructure emergency procedures. Some comments before from those that have been on ride-alongs with our officers. Our fleet has been renewed quite extensively over the last number of years. We've just finished our 2020 expansion. We've added 4 new vehicles that have just gone into service. And our 2021 expansion is currently underway. And I think I reported once before, we have 3 hybrid vehicles. They're gas electric that are going into service. And we have another 9 vehicles that are due to come into service here over the next 3 or 4 months. And the average age of our fleet now is 2018. So our members should be quite happy with the fact that they've got great equipment out there. It's the newest equipment in the policing environment, especially with these new hybrid vehicles that are out there. And of course, when they're running to grab keys, everybody is scrambling to get one of those out on the road. On the facility side of things, our space, the old BTS space that we've taken over on the 3rd floor, I think we reported we have that permit approved now, and we just had a walkthrough with a number of interested contractors. So I think we had 5 contractors walk through, and then subsequent to that, they will be bidding on those contracts. So the estimated time frame for construction is that it'll start somewhere around the 20th of December, and full construction for that area should be completed by March. So pretty excited about that. As you know, that's been a long, long road to get to where we are right now. I'm very excited to have that done, because that'll enhance the locker room space, especially for the women in our police department. And it'll look pretty nice. The design of it is fantastic. On the Bridgeport, on the Richmond side of things, that office, the approval for that expansion for the locker room space over there will go to the CMC, which is the Capital Management Committee, in January. And we're hoping to get approval there so we can start that construction as well as quickly as we can. That'll be a great follow-up to the office renovation that we completed. Members now have a brand new space for their briefing room and meeting room over there. And I don't know if the chief had reported before, but we've been given opportunity to be involved with TransLink in a new waterfront construction area at that station. And they're going to be offering us 2 desks that will be out front, public facing, for our members to be available for access to the public as they're transiting through that waterfront station on their commute every single day. So that's another piece that will help enhance our opportunity to engage with the public. That's my report.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Barry? Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask. You had mentioned the mandatory vaccine policy rollout. And I was wondering, you had mentioned about the constables or the members being vaccinated, but I'm wondering on the civilian side, are there any concerns?
No, there aren't.
We're quite well in hand.
Any other questions?
If there's no other questions, I just ask perhaps Deputy Cumberworth can give the operations update.
Thanks.
Thank you. And so as Deputy Cross mentioned, with the 7 promotions, that's enabled us to fill some vacant sergeants' positions in patrol. This is important because it not only reduces our overtime costs in operations, but it also just provides that stable, consistent supervision, which is required as well in support of each squad. As you're likely aware, throughout this year, we've seen a number of protests related to pipeline, to vaccines, to masks, and this is taxing on our patrol officers because we police these protests to ensure public safety and so on. But we do this in collaboration with other jurisdictional police. So we're in touch with special event coordinators from each jurisdictional police department that's affected by a protest, just to ensure that our operational plans are all consistent and in step and in line with our policing approach to protests. But as I said, it is taxing. There have been a number of them, but we continue to assist where we can. With the targeted mobile enforcement team, October was another very busy month for them, but they're busy because they're self-generators. They generate a lot of their own work, and led by a great sergeant there that really motivates the team. But they had 58 investigations, 3 warrant arrests, 6 joint projects with various police departments, 14 impaired driving investigations, and 3 reports to Crown Counsel. Of note, Constable Haywood, one of the team members, successfully passed his drug recognition expert course. This is a very onerous course, very taxing. It is 2 weeks away at a training center. Not every person who attends the course passes. And the fact that Constable Haywood's passed and successfully passed is a bonus for us, but not only for us, but also for jurisdictional police, as we see that our other member who is DRE, a DRE expert, is called on often to provide that evidence. And that comes into when is a DRE required? It's when a member engages in an impaired driving investigation, impaired driving by drugs, a DRE expert is called to assist in that investigation. For the General Investigation Unit, they have been very busy. Some investigations of note, and I'll only speak generally here, but one involved a card skimming investigation. A card skimmer was inserted at a ticket vending machine at the Yaletown station. And it's a challenging investigation, but it is ongoing, and we expect to see some results there. So more to come on that. Also of note, a child pornography investigation. A cell phone was found at a particular bus stop. Our patrol officers attended. Upon examining the cell phone, discovered a number of disturbing pornographic files depicting children, and that's gone to the General Investigation Unit to investigate. Also, after an extensive investigation by GIU in identifying the perpetrator in this case, this involved an individual who was chased by transit security after they witnessed mischief. The individual pulled a firearm or produced a firearm, pointed it at transit security, and fled. The GIU has identified the suspect by utilizing various investigative techniques. I won't get into them, but suffice to say that a suspect has been identified and an arrest is imminent. And then just finally, you'll recall the swatting incident at Metrotown several weeks ago. What is a swatting incident? It's a prank call to emergency services hoping to elicit a large police response to a particular location. So that's exactly what happened in this case. It involved Metrotown. There was a bomb call, but also an active shooter within the mall itself. A very large police response by multiple police jurisdictions, including transit police. At one point, we had 40 members dedicated to it. And why 40? Because the incident occurred around shift time. So we had day shift coming off and afternoon shift starting. So we had in excess of members to be able to assist with the call itself. Also, at the same time, there was another explosives call that we had to address as well. And that was our explosives detection dogs attended that incident at the same time as the Metrotown incident. So as I said, it was very taxing on a number of police agencies just to handle everything that was going on at the same time. GIU is conducting the investigation. They have a very good suspect in mind, but it's challenging in that it involves national and international cooperation from various law enforcement agencies to bring about charges, but more to come on that. From just switching gears, the Criminal Intelligence Unit, there is a Jurisdictional Police Department intelligence sharing meeting set for January 25th. I believe we're hosting that. And it's important. Why do I mention a meeting? Because it's important for our crime analysts to be involved, for all crime analysts to be involved in discussing intel and crime patterns and so on for the benefit of policing. There's also, we are posting a crime analyst assistant position. We have 6 people who have moved forward in the process, and interviews will start in the next week or so to identify the successful candidate to fill the assistant position for CIU. Within the community engagement team, so you heard Constable Shrez speak about some of the wonderful things going on, Constable Shrez Hanif. And one of those is the Surrey Blue Eagle program. So we've contacted Surrey RCMP, invited them to be a part of the, of course, they are wanting to be engaged in it. They really like what they see with the Blue Eagle program in Vancouver and like to replicate that in Surrey. So Constable Rattray is currently preparing a proposal for funding from the Civil Forfeiture Office. And we hope that he'll be successful there. He was, for the first time, with the Vancouver Blue Eagle program. So we hope he can do the same thing again with the Surrey program. And then Constable, now Sergeant Julian Poncion has completed a business case, or is completing a business case for Community Policing Center Civilian Coordinator to take over the coordination of the CPC at Waterfront and then potentially in Surrey as well. From the crime suppression team, they engaged with Surrey RCMP in a very successful boost and bust project that led to 15 files generated, 10 theft investigations, warrant arrests, breach arrests, a Narcan deployment, and the recovery of a stolen auto. That's just a day in the life of CST. With our dog team, we have a vacancy now because now Sergeant Aaron Chan was successful and he's moved out of the dog team. So that's left a vacancy. So we're currently posting for that. And also the Can-Am, Canadian American World Police Fire Games, which will be held on Windsor, Ontario in July. One of the events is a police explosive detection dog competition. And we are looking to send a member or two to that, to participate in that. Let's see, CISM, our critical incident stress management team, there's 8 members will take part in a 3-day training course put on by retired VPD Inspector Jess Ram, now Dr. Ram. So we have members from VPD, NYPD, CFSEU, and Blackcomb Search and Rescue all taking part in that course. And that's probably enough. That's the latest updates.
Sorry, I was muted. Murray. Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Mike. That was a lot. You guys were busy.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That was a good report. Just I had a question with respect to the Surrey Police Service and the Surrey RCMP. Have we entered into, a joint a JPD agreement with the SPS yet? Or how are you managing that?
I'll defer to the chief, but not that I'm aware with SPS.
Yeah, no. So Murray, there's only one jurisdictional police agency that's ever recognized within a city, which is why the transit police, we go through 22 communities, but we're not a jurisdictional agency. So the RCMP is the jurisdictional policing agency within Surrey. So initiatives that are being conducted on a policing front, we would reach out or be engaged with the Surrey RCMP at this time and place. Surrey PS is, spinning up and that, so those relationships will be between the Surrey Police and the Surrey RCMP and from that side. And then anything we do, just because you don't want to convolute the matter, we can't be, I say, going off with the different partners when it comes to a policing. So we then deal with the Surrey RCMP. If the Surrey RCMP then invite in or have as part of the thing SPS members, then that we see that as one inclusive stop.
Is Chief Lipinski now involved in like the Chiefs Associations?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a bit of a connection. I'm not questioning for the sake of looking to be critical. I'm just wondering how this. I read a report recently about the fact that there will be a point of transition where SBS will take over from the RCMP as the police of jurisdiction, but it will be at some point, a number of months out yet. So I appreciate that, but I was asking more out of curiosity. Thank you.
Maureen.
I just want to acknowledge the great collaboration with the RCMP and the Transit Police. We do a lot of joint ventures together, and we also do debriefs afterwards because we're always interested in how we can make sure that we do a proper deconfliction. But it's a very good relationship. And Dave, I want to thank you and your team for when you talk about the swatting incident in Burnaby at Metrotown and a bunch of other joint initiatives. It's really truly appreciated. And I just want to acknowledge that we have a great relationship and that it really bodes well for public safety.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. And I would note that after the swatting incident, I felt one of the things, showed that we had come a long way was even when it went to the debrief with Burnaby, it probably the most, contributing. There were other agencies such as Vancouver Police and that had showed up, but, we were really well included in the debrief and brought forward. And it was a real sense of the seamless approach as to what happened. Because remember, it started with a bomb call and then led to this. So we then had this crossing and, and it worked, right? And it worked, we'll always learn to improve, but it worked, right? So.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? It just seems, well, I mean, I was going to say 24/7, but that's kind of a stupid thing to say for police because you are. But it was very impressive, the amount and range of things that are going on.
Right.
So thank you.
So if I can, and I won't take up, I know watching our time here is, so first of all, I appreciate the both deputies giving the updates on their divisions, and you can see there's lots going on and there's lots that also isn't mentioned. And I certainly appreciate for everyone's part here. There's a lot of day-to-day stuff and including, Narcan deployments, just the general deployments to the public, the found and missing kids who get reported, assistance to others who perhaps have seniors with disabilities, like including Alzheimer's and dementia, who you find that our members constantly are dealing with and supporting and finding their way back safely. So there is a lot of things going on, and I just want to appreciate everything all the members do. Real quickly on the vaccine update, I would say is that we've drafted our policy. The policy is still with TSML for approval. I would look to make sure I share it to the board here once there's some final drafting, but it's really become, I would say, down to, as Deputy Cross indicated, it's really two individuals.
I'm going to interrupt you because I am a bit concerned that it's easy to slip into.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah. So when I say it's just to assure you that we did a lot of steps ahead of time in terms of getting voluntary kind of identification from the staff, like, just showing, providing what was needed for us to move ahead or move forward. So I can assure you that we're in a very good position. There's no risk to operational continuity on civilian or sworn sides. We're well placed.
Great. Good. And sorry for interrupting, Chief.
Okay.
Is there any other updates? And does anyone have any questions? I have one question. The floods have put a strain on services across the region, and I'm wondering how that's affected our people and our services. And I've been working with TransLink and transportation generally.
So really kind of quickly taking them in different aspects, the Abbotsford Police Department has been offered assistance from a variety of police agencies. The Vancouver Police Department now is kind of coordinating those, at least those who have been able to provide assistance in terms of uniformed members, because Vancouver has their departmental operations center up. So we've been in contact both with Abbotsford, but then, trying to coordinate, you can imagine they have a lot of things on the go. So more coordination that can happen offsite becomes important. And as of yesterday, Deputy Chief Cumberworth had worked through ours, connecting with the Vancouver staff. And so they have a list of who's available, what's available, and whatever they need. So those types of assistance are going in. Speaking to Chief Sear, of course, it becomes less of a policing other than like security, traffic, and that at this point in a rebuilding exercise. So whether it be the deployment of search and rescue to get people out, getting the Army and engineers in to form this levee, it becomes an engineering, a highways management, a reconstruction type part of things. So we've offered it in terms of it, but at this point here, it's had minimal impact to the operational side of what we're doing. I only say that because I'm not talking about whether supplies or everything. All supplies seem to be well, right? We're okay with what we've got. And as I would say to the general public, think like there are still routes. They just take a lot longer, perhaps, to get from A to B. But there is still a way around, even if it means traversing through the United States. In terms of it, we do have some staff who are affected only in access being cut off. And we don't have any staff who are affected physically in terms of it, from what I'm aware, but we do have some who live in the Chilliwack area who've had access to being able to get to work or get home to family. Much appreciated. I did have that communication with the board chair earlier. We also had staff who were at work who couldn't get home. So we provided them hotel housing, so that they were here and comfortable. I know that became a reassurance measure to their families in terms of it. In the long term, I think that, we might want to look at what things have offered. I would, won't go into it too much. I know people who live in that area. We have friends who operate farms in that area. I can speak to one who is now housing foreign workers on his property. He now has whether it's been motorhomes and trailers or campers delivered, but he speaks to, we're upwards of 50 people are now living at his place on a farm, and he's looking at feeding and housing and clothing, and these people who have lost everything. So there are lots of tragic stories still going on. And so I think collectively we may have to move from what is our considered policing response to what we can do as an organization or group of police officers and that to support some of the people who won't be insured. I can guarantee you the foreign workers who are under the programs that are here are very much needed to keep our, to harvest the foods or deal with the agricultural needs that we have. Don't have insurance, of course, and will have lost a lot of stuff because of what's happened. So certainly take it that appreciate the Vancouver has the ability to coordinate the resources in terms of that, but we seem to be not as affected, and it's tough because we're all affected, but not directly impacted as much at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And does anybody have any questions? Okay, so keep us posted on how our people are doing and what supports they need. I'm concerned about them. and their families. And what we can do as a board to support anything that we need as a service to support our colleagues in other parts of the region or the province.
Yeah, I think it is safe to say, Mike Sear indicated to me last night, was that, they were hoping they would have been starting to a recovery point, but they're not there. It's going to take a while. They're not close to saying that it's over. And that's the challenge, right? It's still an ongoing until they get things under control.
And the rains are coming again, so it is a worry. So definitely let us know anything we can do. Okay. We're moving on then to other business, item 3. And the first item is diversity initiatives. So that's a standing item. And Keith, would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
All I would just say is that I would fit into this in terms of it is like, you saw the work that Constable Shiraz and the Cheryl's teams do and others in reaching out into the communities. I mean, this is also a way for us to hopefully see people who may see career opportunities, not just in policing, but joining as well too. So, I mean, obviously we have different targets and audiences from youth to seniors and stuff. So, those all feed into what I would see as initiatives. As indicated, we recently finished a promotional competition. There were promotions into the rank of sergeant, which included a diverse field of candidates in terms of it. So both in gender and in ethnicity and that. So I won't go too much further other than to say there was big progress, like I say, progressing from what we see perhaps was the traditional makeup of our supervisory or higher ranks. Obviously, we have the announcement that Anita Furlan, who couldn't join us today because she's actually on a equity diversity degree program at University of British Columbia she's taking, and so she has an all-day program today. So she begged for forgiveness and is off, right? And she also so she was unable to join us today in terms of it, but she'll be joining us on January 4th. And then another aspect was, you've heard, is this acting corporal position, which is kind of a junior supervisory position where these individuals would normally act in supervisory positions. So instead of being a supervisor one day and a constable the next day, they're basically put into a level of supervisor responsibility full time. They still have to do their job, but they are given this, and it works as a great development tool for future supervisors and gives a great opportunity for it. It's been entered into on a trial period. I had brought this back in my prior employment with the US Police, and it became very successful and has grown in terms of it. So feeding off the same results we had there, we've been able to successfully introduce it. In fact, it was so, I think Oscar's on here, it was so well received that the members put it in place before we had signed the memorandum of understanding. I think I woke up on Monday and these positions were in place and they were doing the role. And then on Tuesday or Wednesday, I got an email from Oscar saying, okay, here's the final draft of the MOU. And I was like, hold on, we haven't signed this and they're already doing it? So anyways, it's all been worked out well. So those things are taking place as we can carry on.
Any questions, anyone? I'm just going to ask George, if you wouldn't mind taking on at the governance committee, just doing some work looking into how we can make our meetings more accessible, as we discussed earlier today,
Sure.
with whatever tools might be available or options for other kinds of those needs.
Yeah, we'd be happy to. And I know that Stephen and Taryn, if you just make a note of that, we'll put that on and have a discussion next time.
Thank you. Okay. So we're moving on to item 3.2, report from the Finance Committee Chair, who is not here. So who's going to be speaking to that? Murray, you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, Ali had asked me to speak on his behalf due to his absence. Yeah, just one item. It was dealt with in the consent agenda, but we had dealt with the Q3 results, financial results for the service, and everything seems to be in order in that regard. Obviously, there are some variances. The report was, as I say, in the consent agenda. Right now, we're projecting to end of year a slight negative variance overall for the department, but based on the information that the committee received, it's a manageable variance within the context of funding that's available for the police service. So no alarm bells. Just it looks like business will be contained reasonably within budget to the end of 2021. And I'll have some more to report on in our closed in-camera agenda package.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay, we can move on to the chair of the governance committee, George.
Sure, thank you, Sarah. I think this is the first time the board's met since we welcomed Maureen Levy to our governance committee. So Murray, Carla, and I are delighted that Maureen has been able to join us, and with her experience and understanding, it's a real addition to the committee, so that's great. We talked a little bit about priorities going forward, and we'll have further discussions about that. One thing, just Chief, maybe just going back to an item that was actually on the consent agenda. It was the 2020 police stops audit report. And not to go into great detail, it was obviously as part of this agenda, but there was a large drop, and this is the first annual audit of police stops that was done. But you told us in the governance committee, and I think it's important that the other board members have some context, very briefly, maybe just describe why there was such a significant drop over the previous numbers. I think that would help provide a bit of perception, because obviously the issue of police stops is an important one that's out there in the public.
So thanks, George. I think generally what you're going to see is that the number of what we'll call as police stops has diminished across not across the province, but across the country when it comes to policing agencies as they've looked at this, I would say, process or what was occurring. So of course, we've seen provincial regulations that were imposed about creating policy, and this board has adopted a policy that speaks to how we can conduct checks, this type of, I want to say, tactic. So they've dropped mainly because of one thing. One is that we've looked at the behavior, looked at the action or the actual practice of doing it. So there's been a decrease or stop in it. The other one is that there's a criteria. In other words, how to capture it properly. So when you're dealing with somebody and there's a reason, a valid reason, whether it be because of a minor offense that's occurred or a major offense, or perhaps a suspect in a potential crime or behavior that is of concern to the police or the public has come to the attention, is capturing it in the proper manner. So you'll have some checks that are now caught and recategorized within general occurrence files, intelligence files, or other sorts of manners in terms of it. But generally what is said is the idea of stopping and talking to people just on a random basis is what this deals with. And so a lot of it has been is that either we have seen that we were not capturing these interactions appropriately, or if they were occurring and were not necessarily appropriate in terms of it, then our members have adjusted their own behaviors and tactics as we go forward in terms of it. So the numbers have dropped. It isn't unique just to the transit police. These are significant and across the country in terms of what has happened. And I think as we're still walking through this, there's a lot of scrutiny about what we do. So this first audit was to look at what did we score as a street check? What were the circumstances behind it? Was it categorized properly? Was it appropriate? And if so, and in some cases, we actually found that some of these should not have been scored as street checks because they were part of a file, or they were part of stopping somebody, say in our case, for being being there without fare, right? Like checking for a minor offense that may have occurred in terms of it. So the trend is consistent, and I think the work and the practices as we move forward will only get better year to year in terms of how police are, how these are captured, how these interactions are conducted. So I think we've almost set like a new baseline at this point in time is what we should be comparing to.
Great. Yeah, and I think just to the chair, this came up because this dramatic drop really was dramatic, and it's listed in the material. But one of the questions that was raised, and the chief answered it, was that there's no concern that by not doing the work that the members are not following up or are not being involved in doing these checks. It really is important that the public feels safe, that they're not standing by. And so, Chief, I think you answered that in the committee, but it just, when you look at the numbers dropping from 2,749 in 2018 to 30 in 2020 and only one from January to August 21st this year, some people may raise an eyebrow. And I think that you had indicated and assured everyone that the work is being done.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And some of it will be just as simple as, you know, if somebody calls because they're concerned about somebody that may look like they're passed out or sleeping in a certain area, you got to remember that in today's world, that's where somebody thinks that it's just somebody, like with the opioid crisis going on, the need to check on the welfare of somebody, you know, ensuring the health and safety is making sure we, even as we do it, as we're patrolling on foot or being on the systems and that and coming across individuals, you know, people want us to be held accountable to recording our interactions with people and why we, you know, stop someone, why we deal with them. For us, it's a matter of recording it properly. So the work is still occurring. We're making sure that we score it, we track it appropriately. If you're checking someone because you're concerned that they might be in medical distress or something like that, then record it as such, not just a street check per se. So the work is occurring. The efforts have to go into it to ensuring that we track it appropriately.
Great. That's, I think, it from our governance committee, unless any other member has any comment.
Thank
Great.
you. Okay, no comments. Okay. Any other business? Anybody? All right, well, we'll call this to close, and our next regular meeting of the board is scheduled for February 4th.